Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Your hosts have built this spot over the past 40 years, meeting every day with people who are in the headlines and behind the real stories. Today, Rob Walgate and Alan C. Duncan from the Public Square are joined by David Zanotti, the CEO of the American Policy Roundtable.
Is a prolonged voting process with early voting and mail-in ballots bad for good government?
For years, people have been saying to me, I don't trust the election system anymore. Alan, do you trust the election system? Honest?
Not 100%.
Okay.
No, I have my doubts.
That was a very diplomatic answer.
I have my doubts sometimes.
I do in the state in which I live.
Okay.
I do here. I don't in other places.
I'm reviewing. I'm now under. We are now under review. We've gone to the tape. We're under review. Recent stories coming out have caused me to stop and say, wait a minute, let's go back and review all of this data once again, because something here again is not right. It started with looking at the calendar, the most recent calendar of when early voting begins, because it's been such a bizarre year. I mean, the monthly update for the American Policy Roundtable is How Did We Come to This? That's the title of it for the month of August. How do we come to this? It's a question everybody's asking. They're shaking their heads going, what happened? Then on the other side, we've got Duncan in Virginia making an executive order. And of course, it appears that the executive order is simply affirming what's already the law in Virginia.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of like
belt and suspenders.
Yeah, it's an exclamation point. Virginia does paper ballots. Virginia does old-fashioned, non-internet connected vote counting of those paper ballots. To which I say, hooray. It's about time. We've been talking about that from the beginning. We were talking about that when companies that were making electronic voting machines were getting very, very upset with us because they were going around the country trying to get contracts and to counties and to states to get their machines in. And they made a boatload of money doing that.
And that's what was interesting to me about the state in which I live is the fact that you may vote different on a different machine or a different method than the person who lives across the street from you if they're in a different county.
How weird is that?
It was an interesting thing to find out. But
so when you look at the chart of the early voting, something's wrong. Something is way off, way wrong. Doesn't make any sense. We've got states that are beginning early voting in September. By the time we get to October, everybody's in the game. And so what we've got is a situation where we have fractured our election process. The idea of a general election, general election, all right, like the general store, everybody's coming to the same place. All right, the general election was that on a set day for set hours, if you were qualified and eligible to vote and you wanted to make your voice heard, you would show up in your neighborhood, in the precinct where you live, which means you only have a few minutes drive, in some cases walk, and you go vote where you go to the place where people know who you are. They turn the book, you sign your name. It's the same name they've seen you sign year after year after year. And you cast your ballot, and then those ballots are counted, accumulated state by state, and then reported and tallied on national elections and all the different types of elections that are on the ballot, the races, on a given day. Now, we were able to get all those results reported by midnight, usually, at the latest, when we were using paper and pencil and electricity.
And we didn't have the technology that we have today.
Without an algorithm and without any digital assistance, we were doing just fine. And now our elections are completely fractured. We can't do it on the same day, which changes the dynamic dramatically. We're doing it in different states all over the board. That means that it's conceivable that you go in to vote, and maybe not the person at the top of the ticket, but somewhere along the line on the ballot that you get, from the time that you vote in September or October to the time the election's actually completed in November, the candidate you vote for might have died.
Yep.
You say, well, that's
happened. That's happened.
That's
happened.
actually happened.
Or the candidate you voted for may do something really stupid, or something may come out of something they did in the past that people found out about. And you're like, wait a minute here.
Whoa, I changed my mind. So what's the purpose of campaigning? See, what's happening is the prevailing ruling class of the political parties is protecting incumbency, which is what they do, which is why they hate term limits so much, because they want to protect incumbency, because incumbency is power.
Oh, politicians hate term limits? Huh?
Yeah,
who knew?
Yeah,
who knew?
Who knew? Okay, so full disclosure, we participated through 1992 to 1994 in the 14 states that passed term limits. We had a significant role to play in that process, including writing some of the original language. We've been at this for a while. We weren't always for term limits, but Congress changed our mind.
Yeah,
on this.
Congress doesn't have term limits. How's that working out for us?
Yeah, there you go. So the power of incumbency is designed to be protected, and fracturing elections works to the power of incumbency. So you've got all of these dates split all over the place. We're not even voting on the same election, September, October, November. The election could change 3 times before the final votes are cast. Now, why would anyone want to participate in that? The only people who want to participate in that kind of a conspiracy in plain sight are incumbents who believe they're unassailable. That, oh, you know Joe, you know Bill, you know Susie, you know Marcia. Okay, you know these people. Just go cast your ballot. Just you're done. That's the way it goes.
Well, it also seems like there's the candidates are not real candidates. It feels like they're avatars for certain belief systems, and so you can plug and play any candidate in, and it's like, well, I know my views are hard left. I'm going to vote for whoever's the hard left candidate. My views are hard right. I'm going for whoever's hard right.
Yeah, you're picking your car color and just go.
Before you even know who the candidate is or what they stand for.
And what's crazy about this, Alan, and sometimes I don't know, I get a little frustrated and I have to get my attitude straightened out. We talk about people like Joe Rogan with great respect, and we're not after anybody's job, and we don't want anybody's market share. But it drives me crazy that people who don't do politics for a living have very wide audiences commentating on politics, but people who actually have been doing elections for 45 years and have seen this stuff with our own eyes inside out and are trying to get the information to the public to say, this is what's really going on behind the scenes. Because we've got a staff of people here for 45 years that research this stuff, and we're an independent organization. We prefer the truth to the lies. Thank you very much. All right, there's more to life than winning an election. There's another one coming right behind it. But people somehow don't seem to get the message. We struggle to get this message out.
We struggle to get the message out. And I think the other thing, and hit on the early voting, has to do with that, is people feel it's their civic duty to vote. And I would agree with that. But it's also your civic duty, in my opinion, if you're going to vote, to take the time to do the research to understand the positions of the candidates on which you're voting. Don't just go vote at the first day you're allowed to have early voting to ease your conscience so you can say, I participated, I did my job. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. You have to do the research and the homework to do your job, because the person that's the county commissioner in your county makes decisions that impact you every day, and you don't hear commercials about them.
So how many buttons were just pushed on phones that just shut off the rest of this broadcast? Because now you're talking about this has got to be a little homework, a little hard work, and a little responsibility. Now,
we spend more time on fantasy football every year than we do on electing Congress.
Thank you for bringing it up, because I'm not challenging people's patriotism, and I'm not challenging their intelligence. We get really distracted. And this is not fun stuff. Politics is less fun than a root canal. It's tough. It's very, very difficult. And you don't want to look at it because you feel frustrated at every level of participation. Rarely is there someone that's on the ballot that you're going, wow, that inspires me. That person inspires me. I am proud and fortunate. I'm thankful to go vote for that person. This is a good thing. Rarely does that happen. Most of the time, we're in the position of trying to protect ourselves, our families, or whatever your interests may be from politicians that are, let's just say it's not a very good choice.
Thanks for stopping by at 1850 Main Street. We're glad you're here. Do you want to learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy? Tune in to The Public Square on over 200 radio stations coast to coast, or download the free Public Square mobile app from your app store. Just look for The Lamppost. Find out what America's talking about at thepublicsquare.com.
I live in a neighborhood where there's very few yard signs put in neighbors' yards. Very few. And it always grabs my attention when someone does. And it's usually not for the president in our neighborhood. It's usually for someone that's for state rep or state senate or prosecutor.
They know somebody's a good person. They want you to know about it.
And I'm like, I take notice of that. If
I
know,
like yard signs.
If I know those people, I'm like, I take notice of that.
Yard signs are like student council races. They're like, what did you stick on your locker?
Yeah.
Right?
Here's the funny thing. I live in a neighborhood, and Rob, I told you about this. I texted you this. I live in a neighborhood where the elderly widows put the yard sign they want you to have in your yard, and then they drive away. That happened to me a couple of weeks ago. And then my wife and I had a fight about if we should leave it up or not. So it's been up and down.
The paper in the neighborhood.
Yeah, okay. They are.
I will say one of the funny videos out there, and I don't think it was staged. Maybe it was staged, but a guy kept having his presidential yard sign taken down of one political party. So he rigged it up so it would give an electric shock when you touch it. And some guy tried to come, parked his bike, came over to grab it, and he's got a little jolt. So don't mess with other people's property either.
So the fractured elections is what we're talking about. The calendar split is bad for good government.
But can I ask a question on that?
Right. Now, it's not completely bad, because to say that we can only show up on one day, there's 336 million people. Somebody is going to have a reason why they can't go that day. And if they're willing to apply in advance and they've got an excuse from to the principal's office, they ought to be able to get an absentee ballot. Nobody's arguing about that.
That was going to be my question. What would your ideal calendar look like?
Election day.
Yes.
And then each state says, here are the conditions you must meet for an absentee ballot.
Yeah.
And then that comes down to simple medical conditions, disability, forced travel based on work, or
within
emergency
10 days
travel.
of the election.
Right.
Citizenship? Would citizenship be on
Okay. Now that you brought
Now the
that
executive
up,
producer is pushing buttons.
now that you got to that, let's talk about the citizenship thing. Because people who have come to me said, I've lost trust in the elections. Well, why have they lost trust in the elections? One of the questions is citizenship. It comes as a great surprise to many people that every federal agency that's out there has been mandated by the Biden administration to make certain that they are doing everything they can to register voters. Now, that just sounds like a pep talk. Talk it up in the shop when people come in for this, that, and the other thing. But it's much bigger than that. There is a federal law that requires certain agencies to give people federal voter registration information, like the Department of Motor Vehicles. That has now been expanded to any place where illegal residents in this country are applying or receiving or questioning in regards to benefits, registering for any form of benefit that is available through the federal government. They must also, with the paperwork, be given a voter registration form. It is mandatory. Now, it is illegal for a resident who is not here legally to vote in any form of an election, state or federal.
But nobody's checking.
But the law says this material must arbitrarily be given out to everyone who applies. Congress has tried to address that. The Republicans have said, we got to change this. The Democrats have said, nah, maybe not. They're slow walking it because the House and the Senate are split, so there's not going to be a change in time for this election. This election's already happening. It's happening in a matter of days. It's not going to change. So when people come to me and say we broke our election system, I say, tell me how. They say paper ballots worked. The other stuff's been nothing but trouble. I can't argue about that. The calendar is split all over the place. We're not even voting for the same election anymore. Okay, can't argue with that. Then they say, what about voter registration? What about people who are, they say, well, nobody does that because these people are here. They understand their context. They're not trying to break the law. Well, they broke the law to get in, but okay, Lord, let's withhold judgment, okay? Let's not assume. Just read an article from Pennsylvania media sources confirmed 6,300 plus voters had to be purged from the files because they were, in fact, illegal residents that had registered to vote. Was that criminal activity? That's for the Secretary of State and Pennsylvania to decide. My personal opinion, I doubt it. That they probably were just filling out all the forms they were told to fill out, and maybe they didn't know it. And I'm not saying those people are stupid, but here's the point. Why are we giving it to them in the first place?
They got it from a government agency. They got the application from a government agency.
So is this, do I do it or don't I? Is you is or is you isn't?
I almost feel like we have to walk back and just ask the question for some people listening. Is it unreasonable for a country to presume that only its citizens should vote in elections? I mean, we have to call the question.
It's the only qualification that's left to vote. And the only skin that we ask an American to be in the game, to put in the game, to have a voice for this massive multi-trillion-dollar budget, national, all this stuff, is could we please just know that you're here legally and where you live?
It's not too much to ask. It doesn't seem like it should be too much to ask. It's not denying anyone's humanity. It's not treating anybody with contempt. I wouldn't expect to be able to vote in another country's elections if I happen to be living there for any period of time.
And guess what? All those other countries wouldn't let you become a resident anyways.
They probably wouldn't even let you in to stay for an extended period of time. The other thing I think on the voter rolls, you talked about purge those that weren't citizens. I think states need to be more proactive in purging those that do not participate over X number of years, whatever that is. And the reason for that is what else, if you don't use, do you get to keep without renewing or having some sort of activity?
And that you don't pay for.
Yeah. Credit card, driver's license.
That you are born with the right to do.
I know some states are proactive in it. I think more need to be. If you haven't voted in 8 years and then you want to show up and vote, well, have you moved? What have you done? Why haven't you been active?
This might take us too far afield, but I'm just thinking politically about this for a second. Because right now it seems like the Democrats are the good guys if you are here illegally and you want to vote. Well, the Democrats are the good guys. The Republicans are the bad guys. They don't want anybody to vote.
That's the way it looks when you read the papers.
When you read the papers. So
the papers. For our children, for your children, when you read your online information.
Yes, the internet links.
Data.
Articles. But I'm just looking. I pulled up a list of foreign language radio stations in America. And I'm just going to go through. There are apparently 10 Chinese language radio stations, 17 Korean, 5 Polish, 3 Russian, almost 50 Spanish language radio stations, and a Vietnamese language radio station. What if conservative-minded people put ads on those stations and did
wait a minute, your data set, go ahead, please finish your thought.
Well, I'm just saying we need to educate people about why America is a great place to live and educate people that are here, whether they're here legally or not. What if we had a public square in Russian, in Spanish, in Portuguese, in Polish language, where we educated people about these principles? And then even if they were voting illegally, what if they voted for conservative things? I'm just thinking outside the box here.
Well, let's talk about those stations. Are those owned by, I mean, because I can tell you as far as 50 Spanish radio stations, I'll tell you in Florida, I think there's 50 Spanish radio stations in Florida alone. There's got to be at least 5 in Orlando.
Yeah, so this is just a preliminary list just to get the conversation started. We can dig deeper and figure out more of this. But
heck, there's a Spanish radio station 2 minutes from our office in Franklin, Tennessee. I mean, and this is and
I'm just saying, if I'm a Republican, I should be putting campaign ads there as well.
And tremendous credit to the immigrant community that primarily speaks Spanish, because they're really serious about talking to one another, and they're really serious about putting roots down in America.
Sure.
And good for them.
Yeah.
All right. Good for them. They're doing it the right way.
They can learn American history and they can learn
Sure.
good principles as well. I think we need to be about educating everybody this year.
This is what's interesting is because when we talk about this stuff, people immediately jump to the conclusion that we are somehow anti-immigrant. That's absolutely absurd. How can you be an American and be anti-immigrant? Everybody came here. Look, I'm sorry. You can even go back to the original Native American communities. They didn't pop up out of the ground here. They got here from somewhere also. We may not have all the records. Okay, but everybody came here. Humanity didn't start on the North American continent. People came here. So you can't even be, being an immigrant is not in Americans' DNA. The question is, how much can you be taken advantage of before you break your country?
Yeah. Are we buying into the same vision for the country?
Yeah, and is that the other part of it? Are we talking about being in America or just being here?
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.